Hey Felix, hi, what's up? How are you doing?
Hey Manav, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Guys, we're recording this in the morning. Felix is around 10 a.m. in the morning, and I am here at around 8 a.m. in the morning. Super early in the morning. So, thank you for doing this, Felix. What topic are we going to talk about? We discussed a lot of topics in our call earlier. We did the first one, which is various roles of a design career. What's this video about?
Well, I think this morning I want to talk a little bit about perspective on design, right? How are designers looking at design, and why should they look at design from a different perspective, and also perhaps talk a little bit about how people outside of design can also look at design. As a user, you don't really think a lot about the mechanism behind the design, right? You don't think about the process, right? So what you see is what you get, and also they do care a lot about the user experience, not consciously but subconsciously, right? They would say it's either easy to use or it's hard to use. There's no in between on that. So that is from the user's point of view. Now, if you think about from the designer's point of view, the way that we look at design is sort of like a checklist, right? I was talking to a lot of mentors from ADP list last night, and we had this conversation, a very serious conversation, and we said, what are designers doing these days, right? Like they're just basically checking lists of like, okay, I got to do user interview, I got to user testing, and I got to do this and that, didi dada, right? But no one actually knows why they are doing each step. Like as a designer, when you look at design, it's not about having a checklist of things that you got to do, but it's more of knowing the intention behind why you do what you do in each step of the process, including the launch and including the design of the visual. So that is important, and I think that is something that that's a difference between the way users look at it and the ways designers look at it.
So let's talk about intention behind design because I also heard you talking about that, and you talk about that a lot. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it is a very simple idea that that you have to be intentional with your design, and what it means is that you got to know why you're doing certain things in your design, right? Why you're designing this element, why you're designing this feature, why you're using this color, down to the details of why you're maybe using a certain set of process. When you actually design with intention and knowing why you're designing what you're designing, you tend to be able to create products that really relates with people. And I often say that, I often say this to a lot of friends, and I say that with a lot of clarity, is that the design is only a natural reflection of your design process. Now, if your design process is there's no intention in it, at the end of the day, the product that you produce will be something that you got to iterate again and again and again because you never really understood why you're doing certain things. But if you really understand at each phase of the design process with intention, then that's when you have a lot of clarity, a lot of focus, and a lot of care put into the product thinking. And when that happens, you would tend to see your users loving more of your product because they can feel it, right? I'll be real, they can feel it. And you tend to see that making a greater impact. Now, if we look at software design, where most people probably come here and listen to that, software design like mobile apps and websites. Now it's easy to make changes because you just go to Figma, Sketch, InVision, whatever, you make the changes. Now think about it, if you're an industrial designer, you're designing hardware products. Now this is why I love industrial design so much. When you start to manufacture those products, now you only have one shot, right? You produce that product, you manufacture that product, right? It's either you're winning or you're on the other side, right? So you want to make sure that you create something truly great. And by that, you need a lot of patience, you need a lot of care and attention to the product. You need to have intention behind that process.
When you put a lot of intention behind your design, a lot of reasons behind everything that you are doing, you are investing a lot of time. When you invest a lot of time with something, you get emotionally attached to it. Then how do you deal with that emotional attachment when the product that you put a lot of care in it, yeah, it doesn't get accepted by, let's say, the users or the market?
Then don't put so much emotions into it, like, right? So you can't hold any feelings to that. But to your product, you mean to your product, you own that product, you launch it, and people don't love it. Now then you gotta sit down and think, right? What does it mean to be a designer, right? To me, if you're happy doing what you're doing, then you're winning, right? Then you're 100% winning. But if you sort of like say, hey, I designed this product and people are like, there's no good feedback about it. What should I do? And I think you often, if you find yourself in a spot where you constantly question yourself, that you need some motivation for what's going on, then you need got to think about whether design is for you, right? Because that's going to happen. Now that happens very early on in different careers, not just design. I got to be honest, right? Like be it in any career, when people give you feedback, most would tend to take it personally at first, right? They will say, this might be a reflection of me, which is why this causes imposter syndrome. If something like that happens, right? If someone says that, hey, your design is not this and that, it would hit you like a truck. And what that means is that you would then tell yourself, oh, I'm right. All this while I'm not enough. You see, so it goes to start. It gotta start from yourself, right? You gotta start from yourself and ask yourself that, be aware of what you're good at, and be aware, firstly, that this is a feedback, and it's for the product and not you.
Apart from the websites like Dribble, Behance, Pinterest, there are a lot of places where you can take inspiration from. Nature, for example, like life around you, is a amazing way to take inspiration. What are your thoughts on that? Do you take inspiration from nature or surroundings? Where all do you take your inspiration from?
I take a lot of inspirations from industrial designers and physical things around us, right? That does not just means architecture. That also means nature. When you start to take inspiration from different things, like cars, even, you start to question a lot. The idea is not to, learn about so much about the philosophy, because you can never really learn about the philosophy behind the design if you never really meet the designer. Not saying that we have to necessarily make it better, but to just be curious about things around us. And the more that you're curious to understand why things happen the way that they do, the more you tend to be able to relate to a lot of things, a lot of people. And that's when I think you start to draw many different inspirations. Because, like, driving back to the designing with intention, it starts with why.
So should you have intention behind inspiration?
I don't think so. Like, this is my perspective, that I don't think you need to have intention behind inspiration, because you're just looking for inspiration. You're not like intentionally, doing an inspiration walk or something like that, even though there are people who do that. But for me, like I say, I just get curious every single day, that it becomes a part of me. Maybe there is an element to that intentional.
No, what I asked was, should there be an intention when you are looking for inspiration?
That is something that I think is debatable. But I think yes and no. Yes is because sometimes you go out, like I say, and you're intentional about finding an inspiration. No, because I've always believed in that very natural approach to inspiration.
There is one question that I ask myself. I used to ask myself some time ago was, what if Dribble and Behance never existed? Where would you take your inspiration from then?
I think if there's no Dribble or Behance, it would be a very different world. But we also need to be cautious about what we're taking from Behance and Dribble, because most of the projects are not implemented, right? They are pet projects, they are visual projects. You gotta be careful about what you're taking out there. You gotta be careful about the inspiration that you're taking from this website, because without actually understanding why they do certain things, without actually understanding if this is actually a real product and why this would actually work, you never really get a true sense of design itself if you just, get inspirations from this website and then do something similar, or, just something different and editing from the template itself.
Some time ago, I took an inspiration from my cousin, who's like a little 5-6 years old. What he always asks is, why to every questions. Like, why does this happen? Why does that happen? The perspective that I got from them was, why don't I ask questions like he does? Why can he get away with the innocence of asking questions, and if I ask the same questions, people would judge me and ask me what a stupid and silly questions I'm asking? Why is that kind of curiosity lost from people when they grow up?
I think, when we're young, we tend to imagine the way that things is by itself, right? We tend to take things as it is and maybe imagine way more than what it could be. And I think that is the potential of design as well. Um, and when you're a kid, you don't have a lot of exposure to things, and you haven't seen the reality of life or the world, so you would tend to imagine that anything is possible, even meeting an alien, so to say. But maybe aliens do exist, right? You don't know what is possible, what is not. You just create things, you just make things up, and that is a very powerful tool. So I want to talk a little bit about that childlike thinking there, because that is so important to any creatives out there. That you never stop believing in the possibilities of what what you can design around you and what can be better, right? And when a child does that, and a child say, hey, why can't this be happening this way? I'll give you an example. Like maybe a child could ask, right? Like, hey, you can say, hey, can you go and get me a cup of water? And he said, why can't the cup of water just pour itself and give it to you? And you start to think, right? Like, yeah, actually, why can't that happen? So as an adult, you are wired in a way to just get the water yourself. But for the children, they just want to do, they just want to question that kind of mentality, that kind of status quo, with a certain sense of curiosity and with a certain sense of, I would say, naiveness. Yet that naiveness can turn into creativity at some point. And I think we should never really grow out of that.
Children, nature, surroundings around you, they are the greatest source of inspiration. They give you perspective, and perspective is very important in design. So that's been it, guys. Yeah, it was a short, sweet episode. Hope we were able to give you some perspective about design.